Well, good evening, everybody, and happy Tuesday to you. You'll notice I'm back here at Good Natured World Headquarters. I'd actually planned to do tonight's program again from the outdoors. I've been tweaking the sound settings a little bit. I think I can hear the insects in the background again. Then Comcast texted me that there's an outage in my neighborhood, and so I didn't even bother going home. I just stayed here, and we've got some nature here in the room, and this was our home base for many months. So we'll do it again. Maybe we'll get outside again next week. Nice to see y'all signing in this evening. We're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's program. Yeah, let's just move on. Before we get started with tonight's nature news, most of you have probably heard this, but I did want to share that we lost a really bright light this past weekend when Kathy Andrini passed away. She and her husband, Bob, were such a big part of the community. She taught for years here at the St. Charles Park District, and prior to that, for more than 20 years, she was a preschool teacher at Swing Set over in Campton Hills. She's it was sudden, and we're all kind of still grieving and reeling from it. But I just wanted to share with you some of the many ways and some of the many lives that she touched here. She taught nature camp for many years. She also was very active in our school programs. She taught nature art in the summertime. Even when her knees were just so painful, she would bring a chair so that she could go ahead and sit down with the kids and continue with their nature fun in the summertime. I can't say enough good about her. I can't tell you how much she's going to be missed. This is a photo I thought you might enjoy. This was in 2010. This is Kathy and Bob, and their was young at the time, granddaughter. I believe her granddaughter is now heading off to college, but they were on the cover of our program guide in 2010, doing what they do best, teaching youngsters and showing them the light of the world that we see around us. We were also really fortunate last year to work with Kane County Audubon to create the Andrini Trail. If you get a chance to head out to Hickory Knolls, go just behind the building. It's the main trail that leads out to the natural area. It was dedicated just about a year ago in September of 2020. You can see here, there's Bob and Kathy with their children, Joy and Jerry and Tony and the grandkids too. It was a wonderful evening. I was really kind of touched too by this realization. I didn't realize that there's actually a Andrini Trail Facebook page. So when hopefully you get a chance, if you're in the area, to get out there and take a walk on this trail, which is now not just a tribute, but it will provide some great memories too of the Andrinis and their impact. But yeah, you can sign in, you can like their Andrini Trail page on Facebook, and maybe they would appreciate hearing that you dropped the line, you drop them a line, let them know that you took a walk there. Just one more thing, this was the ribbon cutting when you get to the top of the first of the glacial deposit hills that the trail goes up and down. There is a bench that's dedicated to the Andrinis and their long association with Kane County Audubon. This was the ribbon cutting. Look at how Kathy is guiding Bob's hand. That, I think, more than anything, symbolizes her effect on us. She was always kind of just there. She might have been in the background, but she was always just gently guiding and making sure that we all had what we need and we were headed in the right direction. So think about that, sent some good thoughts up to Kathy. I know she's probably sending good thoughts down towards us. So, with that, let's move on. Going to be a weird transition, but last week's column that ran in the newspaper was about goldenrod, and just all the fun I've been having with it in my backyard. It kind of came in on its own, and I have to say, this is not one of the more desirable species. It's considered kind of weedy. This is Solidago canadensis, which is the Canada goldenrod. You look up in field guides, you'll sometimes see mention of a tall goldenrod. Some parties will say we've got both tall and Canada, some lump them together, but it does, every one of these little flowers turns into a little seed that takes to the wind and uses its little parachute structures to fly and land and create more goldenrod plants. So these landed in my yard just this past year. And when I was out, I think I was spying on the mice that live in the bird feeder. I was out there, I was trying to be quiet, and I kept hearing these buzzing sounds, and I turn around and I see that the goldenrod is just like a magnet for all sorts of insects. Now, if we zoom in on this one, here we see not just your usual, not that there's anything wrong with our usuals, the bumblebees and the carpenter bees, but here we've got some sweat bees. This is one of the halictid sweat bees, a metallic green variety. And over here is a locust borer. I have a friend here at the Park District, Jill, who is one of our restoration ecologists. She one year was going after mulberries, removing the invasive mulberry that we have in our natural areas. This year, her target species is black locust. And guess what the larvae of the locust borer feed on? The living tissues inside of the black locust. You can see from the species name, Robineae, and I believe it's Robineae. Yes, I'd have to double check, but that is the species name of the black locust tree. So black locust tree and locust borer happening right now. Such a cool looking insect. These guys, the way I blew it up here makes it look like it's giant. It's really, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an inch long, and the adults feed on nectar and pollen. When you have insects like that hanging out on your flowers, you're going to get some predators. We talked about crab spiders last week, but I thought it was worth mentioning again. It's really kind of fun to see if you can pick these guys out, because their camouflage is just so exquisite when they're sitting. This is in some circles called the flower crab spider, but this time of year, pretty much everybody calls it the goldenrod crab spider, because that's where it's hanging out. So, in walking around my yard, seeing the somewhat weedy variety of goldenrod that I have, and just getting a big kick out of it, I also noticed that there was a more subtle goldenrod presence. I think, and if there's a goldenrod expert who wants to jump in and say for sure what this is, I was just going to call it a woodland goldenrod. We've got in this area, we've got elm leaf goldenrod, we've got zigzag goldenrod that actually grow in shadier areas. The Canada goldenrod that we were just looking at, it likes to have a lot of sun, as do our less weedy varieties like the showy goldenrod or the stiff goldenrod. This is actually growing in a shady corner of my yard, and it blew in and it's taken hold. And so even when there's not sun, if your yard happens to have a lot of shade, you can add goldenrod varieties to it as well and enjoy all the pollinator action that they bring. So goldenrod gets kind of a bad reputation sometimes amongst people who suffer from seasonal allergies. And you guys probably already all know this, but I just want to underscore, it is not the goldenrod that's making you sneezy and itchy at this time of year. It is this plant here. This is ragweed. This picture, I took this picture just up the street from my house. And by the way, I am amongst the ragweed sufferers. I've kind of had a on again, off again relationship with this plant. I didn't have any ragweed allergy until I was in my late 20s. And then I had it for about 10 years. In fact, when I first got it, I didn't know what hit me. I was just, just miserable. The roof of my mouth was itchy. I couldn't scratch it. My eyes were watering. And then a coworker told me, oh, you're allergic to ragweed. But then by my late 30s, it went away. And it was gone for another, I would say 10 years. About the time I turned 50, it started to come back again. And taking Claritin tonight, so I'm not itching and scratching while we're talking. But this picture that I took here, this is some ragweed that's growing just up the street from me. You can see the sidewalk here, and there's a parking lot over here. This doesn't need, pristine habitat in order to grow. And the thing with this, it gets mowed every week, and it still was putting out flowers and now, sending out pollen, making us all itch. This is one form that ragweed takes in our area. Here's the other form. This is the giant ragweed. And by giant, we're talking, at least 4 feet tall, sometimes 6 feet tall. I've seen it as tall as corn, which is, what is that, 7, almost 8 feet. The thing with ragweed, you'll notice, let's go back to this one. These flowers that the plant produces, they're not very showy. They're not really trying to attract a lot of pollinators because they don't need them. Their pollen flies on the wind. And their pollen, boy, talk about something that you just know would be irritating it. Now, it's microscopic little grains, but they are covered with spines. And when they take to the wind, you get them in your eyes, you get them up your nose. If your immune system is at all triggered by them, you're going to be miserable for probably a few weeks till the ragweed dies down. You might be wondering, why do we even want this plant around? Why isn't it banned? Well, one, it's native, and two, the flowers form seeds that are valuable to several of our game bird species. In fact, the genus name for ragweed is ambrosia. The pollen, if it does collect in great quantities, you'll see it's got kind of a golden color to it. And then the seeds, they're very rich in oils that help our game birds get through the winter. So I gotta say, I'm very torn on this plant when I'm itchy and sneezy and my eyes are watering. I'm not a big fan, but knowing the benefits that it can bring to our local wildlife, I try to tolerate, hence the Claritin. Anyway, the allergies at this time of year are not caused by goldenrod because that pollen is too heavy. You saw the pollinators that are drawn to the plant. That plant needs insects to move its pollen around. Ragweed just lets it all go to the wind. Got it? All right, so last week I said we would take a look at a mystery nest, and here it is. This is actually courtesy of my friend Peggy, who works out DeKalb County. She had these photos sent to her, and she was puzzling over them. And when you look at them, you can see that it's a pretty nicely woven structure, and it's not terribly large. There's now icebreaker mints are bigger around than the 2 5/8 inch lip balm that I would prefer as my element of measurement. But even at that, this is not a huge insect. It was too small to be a squirrel. And it looks as though it might have been in amongst some other vegetation. It was found laying next to a stream bank, and Peggy asked my thoughts. And to be honest, my first thought actually went to something that's not terribly welcome around here, but they do have some weaving abilities. It's the house sparrow. Now this information here, this is kind of dated here. This is on the Bluebird website, Cialis, and they talk about how house sparrows are in the weaver finch family as taxonomy and DNA technology has progressed. We've found that that's not really the case. The house sparrow is considered an old world sparrow, but with that said, they can weave together a pretty neat nest. Even now, this one was inside of a bluebird house, but they can sometimes form free standing nests. I saw this downstate. I was at a rest stop near Springfield, and it was either the house sparrow or its cousin, the Eurasian tree sparrow. But they were these wonderfully, sort of messy, but also kind of organized nests that the birds were flying in and out of in a tree. There were no structures that they were building in. And so my head was kind of going with this mystery nest. Maybe, is it one of our introduced species that could have created it? I thought as I was kind of looking for examples of house sparrow nests, I came across this article. As much as we try to get rid of the bird in this part of the world, in other parts of the world, in fact, in its native range, and I know in England, they're kind of worried about it because agricultural practices there have changed and the numbers have plummeted. There is a campaign to help save them over in India. So they're not hated worldwide. It's not a universal thing. They were introduced in this country in, I believe, around 1850, and it took them a little while to get a foothold, but now they're pretty much everywhere. I'm digressing though. Let's get back to this nest thing. Peggy thinks that it's the work of the meadow jumping mouse. Now, she has a field guide. I believe this is the Field Journal to Illinois Mammals. That's where this text came from. And we highlight here that during the summer, jumping mice make these globular nests of grass, leaves, and moss that are hidden underground, and they have a side entrance. So she's thinking that that nest is the work of the meadow jumping mouse. And when we were talking about this, I said, I had never heard of this mouse before. I actually even went and got my Hofmeister's Mammals of Illinois book out just to see if I could learn more about them. I knew about our deer mice and our white-footed mice, the Peromyscus mice. Well, the jumping mice, sure enough, they are present here in Kane County. In fact, now Hofmeister's book is several decades old, but at the time he said that it was becoming increasingly common. It's more widespread in Illinois than earlier workers believed, and they continue to be found in new places. So yeah, that's what Peggy believes it is. I wasn't 100% sold on that, and to tell you the truth, I'm still not 100% sold, but I was kind of leaning towards this critter here, the marsh wren. They make quite an elaborate woven nest with a hole about the right size. If we do a side-by-side comparison of a marsh wren nest and the mystery nest, you can see there's some similarities. I don't know about this big twig here, but if this nest fell, if this had been part of where it was, something that was being used to stabilize the nest, it could happen. I would really appreciate your comments and thoughts too, if you have any other ideas of what this mystery nest might be. Anyway, you look at it, it is a pretty amazing find for this part of Illinois. And if I get a definitive on it, I'll let you know. But from that, we're going to move on to Mystery Scat. our friend Valerie came upon this. I guess it was last week, Valerie, up at Tecklewitha Woods. And the first thing that when you look at it, what's the first thing that strikes you? Probably, for me anyway, it was the quantity, but then also the location. So what we're looking at here, these are some little shelf fungus. I don't know, so it doesn't look quite like turkey tail, but it's growing. All this stuff is piled up on these fungi on the side of this tree. And they're somewhat rodent-like in their character. They're pellets, they're sort of dry looking. Now, if there had been a bat dropping these, they would have more of a shiny characteristic to them. Bats in this area feed on insects, and insects tend to have shiny exoskeletons. Bat scat tends to be kind of shiny. This is not, it's a dull surface, a matte surface. It actually looks very regular. Bat scat will be somewhat irregularly shaped and sometimes kind of twisty if you look really closely at it. So pretty sure well, I know it's definitely not bats. I started puzzling over it. Valerie, I know you've been puzzling over it. The other thing that came to mind, remember these old pachinko machines? They were really, they hit a little rise of popularity here in the 1970s. A family I used to babysit for had one, and it's Japanese pinball. These little balls bounce through these series of obstacles and end up, I guess you earn points as they bounce around, but it's a vertical type of machine, just like the vertical surface of our tree trunk here. So I was thinking, is there any way that scats could be dropped from above and they could bounce around like the little balls in a pachinko and kind of all end up in this one area here? Seems kind of unlikely. The angles seem wrong. Not 100% sold on them dropping from above. Another possibility that I was considering was maybe it was a flying squirrel, and sometimes flying squirrels will create like a little latrine within their cavity nests. And I thought, well, maybe there was a case where there was not enough room or something, and little flying squirrels were sticking their little flying squirrel butts out the openings in their trees and dropping them down. But it just doesn't seem, in fact, let's look at another picture here. It just doesn't seem like they could pile up like that. So Valerie and I started to come to the same conclusion. It's still not a conclusive conclusion though. We're thinking that maybe these are insect frass pellets and they're coming from the inside of the tree. You can see there's some holes behind where this largest deposit is. One insect that I found online that does produce a frass pellet like this is the termite, but the measurements are wrong. These are larger than what termites tend to produce. And this isn't really a hotbed for termite activity here in Northern Illinois. So again, it's a puzzle. Would appreciate your thoughts, your insight, or if you happen to see something like this somewhere else, and maybe there's an obvious answer to it. I would love to hear about that as well. But that's part of what makes nature so fun, is that you can't possibly know everything, and it's just sort of neat to the more you try to figure something out, the more you realize how much more you have to learn. So just put your thinking caps on. If you have any ideas, you can put them in the chat, or not. It's up to you. Just kind of fun to have a little mystery to spice up the evening. Now, no mystery here. This is Jewelweed, and Jewelweed has graced us with its presence all summer long. It's been out, grows in moist areas. You'll see down there the genus name is Impatiens. Yes, it is a cousin of the Impatiens that we buy at garden stores. and plant as an annual in our yards. Like that plant, Jewelweed too has a really fleshy stem. In fact, it's been recommended or has been used to treat different skin ailments. I've heard that you can, if you get into poison ivy, you can rub it on to help with the rash. I suspect there that maybe the liquid, the fluid that's inside the plant stems, maybe if you rub hard enough, it might help get the oil from the poison ivy off your skin. I know it does help with stinging nettles. Nettles is a different sort of reaction on your skin. It doesn't last as long, in getting the jewelweed sap or the liquid that's inside on where the stinging nettle touched you. It does provide almost immediate relief, and jewelweed and nettles tend to grow close together. So kind of a handy thing to remember if you find you've got some burning, itching, nettle-like things happening on your legs. Look around, you might find some jewelweed to take that sensation away. So thing is, we're getting to the end of the jewelweed bloom season. And so these beautiful blossoms and the pollinators they attract. I think I was watching a hummingbird the other day going to one of these jewelweed blossoms. You'll notice there's no picture of it because I'm not so good with the camera, but they've got that tubular kind of bloom, and but they are starting to fade. And what again is the purpose of a flower? A flower turns into seeds. And that's where the jewelweed story gets even cooler. You'll notice down here, the family that it belongs to, the common name for it is the touch me not family. And it's because of what happens when the seeds form. So here's a seed pod. This was actually about this time last year we made this video, but gonna see if this will play in slow motion. When you touch them, boom, the seeds fly away. It's kind of a fun thing to do when you're out. You see this plant along the Fox River. It grows in a lot of our wetland areas as well. You can help that jewelweed achieve its goal of getting its seed spread by just giving it it's even though the family says touch me not, go ahead and do it, touch it, watch them fly. I don't know how you all feel about wild edibles, but this is a seed that is edible. I'm not advocating you go out and try it, especially if you have a history of food allergies, but I'll tell you that I did try it, and they have a nutty flavor to them. I would say it's kind of like an English walnut, if you can imagine that flavor, but small. You need a lot of them to make up just, the meat of one walnut. But if you're looking for a little snack, you're not afraid to try it, you don't have a history of food allergies, you might be tempted to. Of course, that'll mean that will be that many fewer jewelweed seeds getting flung out to start more jewelweed plants. But it's really fun. It's something I look forward to every year, and it's kind of a surprise when you touch those really kind of firm, small seed pods. Keep an eye out for them. Give it a try. Really fun. So this, and Valerie, if you're listening, this is, you and I have talked about this rock before. Kelly and Greg, I'm sure you're familiar with it. This is on Dean Street here in St. Charles. And if you look really closely, this particular day, this rock had turtles on it. I have occasion to go take Dean Street, usually out to Randall Road, pretty often, especially when I'm heading up to Primrose Farm. I go up there probably at least once a week, and I love looking over at the rock. Turtles in the summertime. This week there was a cormorant. You can see I actually pulled off the road. I drove into the business park there and parked and watched this young cormorant. I just had my cell phone camera with me, so I couldn't get super close up, but I think it had been cruising around looking for fish. There's actually quite a few carp. When I walked over to look into the water, there was some big old carp that were stirring up the silt in the bottom of the pond, but it took off. It was the cormorant was then swimming around, but there's, I'd say 9 times out of 10, if you drive by that rock in the daytime when it's warm out, you're going to see some sort of creature, either a turtle or some kind of bird hanging out on it. It's a popular rock. I thought you might want to know about it. So here's just a little reminder. We've talked about chimney swifts from time to time, and it is that time of the year when they're on the move. There are a lot of chimney swift roosts in this area, and they're, Kelly and Greg, you mentioned the one at Burgess Norton over in Geneva. The one on the right here, Susie, that's your still from your video that you took. That's up in West Dundee. I believe that's City Hall. Over 2,000 swifts were counted going into that particular roost. There's several hundred, actually I think into the thousands too at Burgess Norton. If you go into downtown Geneva, the chimney at the back of, it used to be Merrilee Shops, now it's a jewelry shop there on the corner of State Street Jewelers. It's at the corner of State and 3rd Street on the southeast corner. These guys, what's going on is they're migrating south. So we're seeing our resident swifts might still be here, but they're being joined. If they haven't taken off, they're being joined by swifts from the north. These birds have a pretty magnificent journey that they go on. Here's a range map here on the left that shows their breeding range in the summertime, goes up into southern Canada, all over the eastern United States and a little bit west of the Mississippi. And then they take off and they fly south. Some will kind of follow the land bridge here through Central America. Some will go through Cuba and then make the trip across the Gulf here. But they head down to South America where they spend the winter time. And they're not a real big bird. A lot of people refer to them as flying cigars, but to think that they're undertaking this sort of a journey and they're stopping here, it's just really cool to see them going down, swirling down into that chimney at night. John Doerr had pointed out a few weeks ago when we talked about swifts that as they're coming in, so these birds they can't really perch. They've got very weak feet and they've got a sort of a different structure to their feet, so they can't rest during the daytime. If they're going to stop, they have to find a vertical surface that they can hang on. And as they go into these chimneys at night, they're swirling around and then they kind of helicopter themselves. When they get above the chimney, then they go down and then they hook themselves on the sides. Not too many birds can maneuver like that. The other bird I can think of is the hummingbird, and guess what? Hummingbirds and chimney swifts are actually fairly closely related. And when you see a chimney swift flying, you'll notice that they've got a really stiff kind of a wing beat, very hummingbird-like in the way it moves. Now I said they're small, they are bigger than hummingbirds. So they've got a little bit more substance to them, and they are insectivores. That's why they're leaving us right now. That as weather gets colder, our bugs are going to go away and they're going to need to find a source of food. So off they go, and now is the time to see them. Don't wait too much longer though, because they'll be pushing farther south because they know the colder weather is coming. But if you get a chance, see if you can find a chimney and observe these swifts and their nightly ritual going down into their chimneys. So this is from Susie. It's a little invitation. This Thursday, there's a dark sky presentation. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Clark Environmental Services, but they're actually the I think the world's leading mosquito abatement company. You might think, how does that fit in with the environment? The facility that this is their headquarters here in St. Charles, and it is a zero waste facility. They're very, very careful about giving back, given that their business is killing bugs. They've been pioneers in developing all sorts of chemicals that are targeting as best they can just mosquitoes and not harming other groups of insects. Or insects are, boy, you know what, Susie, I'm just looking at this. We had to change the time on this invitation, but it looks like this was material that was provided to us. It's actually not last year's Thursday, it's this coming Thursday, September 16th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at Clark Environmental. Sidwell Court is located off of Tyler on the east side of town. And Clark is real good to offer up their meeting facilities for programs like this. The talk is taking a look at the importance of dark skies. And especially now with migrating birds, we just talked about swifts, but boy, there are millions of birds that are on the move right now. I just saw a sort of a sobering article showing the number of birds that died just in one night against 2 buildings in New York City. Now, we're lucky here in the Midwest and in Chicago. Chicago has a pretty proactive building managers are pretty proactive in turning lights off. But we've had some horrible tragedy. You know, the McCormick building was notorious for causing a lot of bird deaths because it's all glass and it's right there on the lakeshore. But as much as possible, they've been trying to encourage building managers to turn their lights off, and because birds, a lot of migration takes place at night, even though the birds are, you know, a diurnal species. You know, they're flying around in the daytime. The conditions at night really favor long distance flights. Typically, winds will die down. There's less other traffic out and about. The birds can fly at a higher rate, higher altitude, and you know, get where they're going a little bit faster. But anyway, if you're at all interested in the area of light pollution and ways that things you can do to help control your own personal light print in the sky, this is a great opportunity to go and learn a little bit more about the International Dark Sky Association. So with that, you know, we're going to wrap things up a little bit early tonight. Next week, we're going to be looking at meat-eating chipmunks. You might, if you've been tuning in week after week, you might recognize that photo because it is one that we show every week as part of our introductory slide. The infamous meat-eating chipmunk will make a big splash next week. We're going to take a look at other things that glow. Mike, I have to thank you for that. We're working up that piece. We haven't had the black light flashlight out in a while, so we're gonna have some fun with that. Learned about an interesting hazelnut that was found growing in this area. And who knows what else is gonna happen in the ensuing week's time. So appreciate you logging in tonight. I'm going to stop the share. Looks like we got some comments here in the chat box. Okay, so Valerie is validating ragweed. Floyd Swink, who was a giant in the field here in terms of botany, and his photographic memory for names and plants and just an amazing man. The Swink part of the Swink and Wilhelm book that you may have heard reference to. Black-throated blue warblers eating giant ragweed seeds. And a grosbeak reading ragweed seeds too. And Wallace was guessing discarded nuts. You know, oh, you guys were having a whole conversation here. Very regular in shape. Yeah, I would like to go and find this tree again. It's up at Tekawitha Woods. Sometimes, you know, crushing it and looking at it with a hand lens, you can get a feel for what those little particles are. Were you going to say something, Valerie?
It's pretty easy to find.
Oh,
I can take you there. I'll get you right to it.
okay. Yeah, we'll take a look, do some investigative. We'll do some investigating, see if we can figure that out. Oh, and Diane's got an interesting take. If we identify the tree, that might help lead us to what might be feeding on the inside of it. And yeah, touch me nots are big fun. There's a couple other plants. Wild geranium will fling too, but to me, it's just not quite as dramatic as those fleshy jewelweed pods. Yeah, Greg and Kelly, I knew you'd know about the rock. And Valerie, you've commented on it too. There's always something happening at that rock in the summertime. The turtles stack up on it, the cormorant. When I went back that day, after I'd taken the picture, the cormorant was sitting on it and had its wings spread out. It must have gone for a swim and it was drying its wings out afterwards. So check it out if you can. They're on the north side of Dean Street, just a little bit east of Randall.
I'm kind of expecting that they're going to be little party umbrellas one of these days on that road.
It's that kind of place. Well, there's the party barge, you know, in the river, the Fox River, just north of Redgate every weekend. You'd think the same thing would be going on in the party rock. So, and Susie, yeah, rock in the Fox by the, Susie, I think you're talking about the one that's between the bridge and the dam in St. Charles. Is it that one?
Yeah, the one, actually, it's right under, very close to Prairie Street Bridge.
Oh, down the other direction.
Yes.
Because there's one with the water being so low right now, there's one that's pretty prominent between the bridge, the Main Street Bridge and the dam. But I think I know what you're talking about. I think, didn't we see a heron standing?
Yes, we did. Yes.
The other day, yeah.
It's either a heron or an egret, although the other day was a cormorant. But it's also because the water is so low, it's sticking out, and they flock to it, which is kind of fun.
Another party rock.
Right.
I guess they're all over town. Well, it's fun to look, and especially if you frequent an area, it's fun to see the changes too. As you know, sometimes there's territory battles, and you know, pretty soon our turtles will be going under for the winter. It's always fun to see what the different changes in season bring us. With that, I think we'll say goodnight. Very much appreciate your time this evening. Hope we see you back again next week. Take care of yourselves. And if you get a chance, think a good thought about Kathy. We all miss her. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
So long, everybody.